Christian Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Making of a Biblical Leader, a Practical Guide to Leading Others Well, edited by Robert L. Furrow. Forward by Erwin W. Lutzer. Narrated by Bob Souer. Forward. Erwin W. Lutzer. If I could choose just one book to read on the topic of biblical leadership, this would be it. When I read the first chapter of this book, Good and Bad Leaders by Robert Furrow, I was convinced this chapter alone is worth the price of the book. I also wished I had this book to read when I was a young pastor so many years ago. As I continued to read the rest of the chapters, each written by a different contributor, I became convinced that not only was this book biblical, it was also practical and realistic. Nothing happens without leadership, whether the leader is good, bad, or somewhere in between. No matter where a leader lands on the scale, they will have a disproportionate impact on those whom they lead. Though we often hear stories of failed leaders, we need to hold before us examples of what faithful leadership looks like. So yes, this book lives up to its title. It is a book on biblical leadership. Not a list of lessons drawn from the corporate world, not a formula for how to get to the top, nor how to accumulate power. Instead, it's a book on how to lead through relationships, how to maintain earned respect, and how to lead with a spirit of servanthood. The Making of a Biblical Leader deals with the character of a leader, from integrity and a commitment to truth to having a heart for the hurting. It reminds us that leadership should never be taken for granted or used for personal gain. It warns about lording it over a flock and setting ourselves apart from the struggles of the common person. The contributors to this book know that leadership is a calling, not a right. We've all known leaders who acted as if their followers belonged to them. Consider the contrast between Saul and David, whose stories are told in considerable detail in the Old Testament. Saul clung to his leadership even when God had taken it from him. He clung until his knuckles turned white and apparently died by suicide. After David sinned and eventually had to leave Jerusalem, he left his future leadership entirely in God's hands. He knew the kingdom was not his to keep. Recently I spoke in a thriving church whose building was donated to them by a previous congregation that closed its doors because it couldn't survive in their changing neighborhood. I asked myself, how come this church was growing in the very building where another church couldn't survive? I soon discovered the answer. The pastor modeled biblical leadership. Now for a very personal word. There are some books on leadership that emphasize the personality of the leader, who is expected to be dynamic, decisive, and visionary, all wrapped up in a bundle of multiple gifts. Those kinds of books are a discouragement to me personally. What I need is a book for the ordinary leader, for the person who has no extraordinary gifts but still feels the call of God on their life. The Making of a Biblical Leader stresses that character is more important than gifting, and humility is more important than being a super leader. This book is for the ordinary man or woman who can thoughtfully share their heart with people, who can enlist others who make up for their own weaknesses, and who doesn't care who gets the credit for what God does. Listen to this book, share it with the leaders in your orbit, and realize that good biblical leadership does not come automatically. God gives us gifts of leadership, but these skills need to be honed and developed. And God promises to enable all those whom He calls. Erwin W. Lutzer, Pastor Emeritus, The Moody Church, Chicago. Part 1. The Essentials. Chapter 1. Good and Bad Leaders. Robert Furrow. Armed with my newly earned B+ from a high school elective auto upholstery class, I marched down to the nearest auto upholstery shop and filled out a job application. I was hired on the spot. The extent of my experience was that I had spent about an hour a day during a sophomore semester learning the ins and outs of how to be a trimmer, otherwise known as one who restores the insides of automobiles. What did I quickly learn? I was woefully
Sample complete. Ready to continue?